Okay, so if we're going to properly understand the math of the NFTREASURE ecosystem, we need to dive into some of the tokenomics and supply caps for some of these tokens. So what are the tokens? Well, the new token that we're introducing is the TRESR token, and that's capped at 468,541,325 TRESR. But this could be turned off earlier with a vote if we decided that we wanted to do that. This cap, based on gameplay, could be hit anywhere between 12 and 48 months. Just depends on how many players and how actively they're logging in. There's going to be periodic votes to review the early capping of emissions. So in a year from now, if we're just crushing it in e-commerce sales, we can decide, do we want to cap this, or do we want to, which would essentially reduce the supply of TRESR immediately, or do we want to keep it going and just fully mint out the supply? Initially, TRESR can be earned through the TRESR box game and bonus pool. If you've watched this entire video, you already know all about that. Otherwise, you can jump to those sections, which will adjust over time to incentivize ecosystem-friendly, healthy ecosystem behavior. TRESR can be staked to earn veTRESR, a governance token that will become one of the most powerful assets in terms of control over project direction and revenue rewards capture. Remember, that's what you earn here in the bonus pool by staking your TRESR. Certain limited edition merchandise, prize pools, special auctions, and other protocol products and services may also be paid for in TRESR. So basically, you just use the e-commerce tool, check out, and pay in TRESR. TRESR allocation and emission schedule. In total, the community controls nearly all of the tokens, 90%, through emissions, liquidity, diamond allocations, and a community-governed treasury. 9% of the supply has been awarded to our Diamond Hands community, who have voted for a 180-day lockup with a 100-day vesting period. So I'll get into the project history in a different section, but basically the TLDR is that this project was seeded by an old project called SmartCoin. If you played the SmartCoin Smarter Coin game and you had an unblemished record in that game, then you're being awarded some allocation, given that NFTREASURE was seeded from that old project's treasury. For the first 180 days of gameplay, those tokens will not be on the market. And then at 180 days, those tokens will start to vest over 180 days. Now, there's something like 7,000 wallets that are potentially available for this allocation. We will look at 180 days, how many of those wallets actually participated, and any wallets that didn't participate, we will be burning these tokens. So at 180 days, some tokens will be locked up, but we'll also be burning a lot of TRESR. 15% of the total TRESR supply is going to live in the NFTREASURE and be controlled by the community via on-chain proposals and voting. As a percentage of the total maximum totals, liquidity is small. 1% is going to the initial liquidity. This is based on a 90-day predicted net emission schedule of perfect play, and will likely be 10% to 50% portion of the circulating supply, depending on gameplay. So basically, we'll be deepening liquidity over time, but the early liquidity is going to be very small, 1% of the token supply, because the rest of the tokens are issued via the game. Part of the game and early incentives will be based around adding and providing liquidity. So that's part of the incentive for deepening that liquidity. Additional plans exist to create permanent protocol ownership of additional liquidity tokens. So this could be potentially using some of our revenue to pair our own liquidity, or even creating merch drops that you can only purchase through JLP tokens, perhaps. Should the game create sufficient liquidity on its own, any unused liquidity allocation will be burned. One constraint the project had was a small launch budget to maximize efficiency in revenue-producing areas, which is the e-commerce. This also results in a smaller initial liquidity pool. Because the purpose of the game is to create deep enough token liquidity to support the revenue loop, paired with the likelihood of participants who might suicide compound as a way to stake additional JLP, the price is likely to fall over the long term until the revenue loop begins. Outside of other unseen market forces, this is our U-shaped recovery thesis, which I'll go into in another section. But basically the idea is, okay, well, the treasure token is inflationary until we hit a supply cap. Once we hit a supply cap, the NFTREASURE becomes a forced buyer of the treasure token. We're still burning tokens for very various things, or people are still staking treasure tokens. And essentially, the thesis is that when there's more demand than supply, because we won't be minting anymore, that potentially the price of treasure takes a U-shaped recovery. This is total speculation, but you can see in other projects that to some extent this has played out. You can even look at the Smarter token right now, because it's already deflationary, and extrapolate that out into the future onto the treasure token. Again, nobody knows. We must assume that everything will go to zero, but it is fun to talk about some of this, and we do that a lot in the Discord. To combat suicide compounding, low price can allow for liquidity to be added without much out-of-pocket expense should players choose to do so. So rather than you having to sell your tokens into AVAX in order to form new liquidity, the initial price is going to be small enough where you should be able to pair some up on your own using new AVAX rather than suicide compounded AVAX. The community will need to be cognizant of the impact of the 180-day lockup ending, as a rush of liquidity will be available at this point. So what does that mean? This founder's allocation, which is now called the diamond allocation, there's 42 million and change treasure tokens that will unlock in 180 days. They're going to be vested over another 180 days. So, that's 42 million divided by 180 a day that will be released. However, it's going to be much smaller than that because of the founder's allocation. Anybody that has a wallet connected to the game that doesn't end up minting a key, we're just going to burn those tokens. So before this allocation is released 180 days in, we'll showcase how much is actually a part of this allocation versus how much treasure we're burning. You can see that game emissions are the majority, 65% of the treasure supply, 1% is going to initial liquidity, 9% is allocated for that diamond allocation. This 5% investors was originally going to the protocol that helped seed fund the project. However, that protocol has now distributed their treasury, and so we will either burn these tokens or we'll put it to a vote to keep these on the side in case we want to raise more money in the future. The treasury itself will be 15% of the supply. This is distributed out over a 12-month period, and I believe a 12-month period. We'll get into that in a second. And this is for us to negotiate what we want to do. Maybe we deepen liquidity for this. Maybe we give it away as prizes. Maybe we use it to incentivize new team members to come on. And then 5% is going to the team who has worked very hard to get this thing up and running over the last 12, 18 months. The total supply, 468 million and change. That's how it's all allocated. You can always see that by clicking here on the tokenomics section. All right, so what do the lockup periods look like? The game emissions are going to start immediately and will be released over a 12 to 48 month period. Liquidity has no lockup. It's fully released. That 1% is fully released on game start. That's how we start the initial LP pool. The founders or diamond allocation is locked for 180 days. Those tokens do nothing. After 180 days, they start to vest over 180 days. The investors is locked for 180 days, then vested over 180 days. The treasury has no lockup, but it is released starting from day one over a 12-month period. And the team is locked for 180 days and then vested over 180 days. If you have questions about that, just ask in Discord. All right. The veTRESR reward schedule is based on earning 0.02 veTRESR per hour per treasure staked. So the more treasure that you have staked, the more that you're going to earn. Your max VE is going to be basically 100 times whatever you have staked. So veTRESR, this is a token that is non-transferable or tradable due to the design of the smart contract. They are locked in the private wallet of the user. So you can't buy these. You got to earn them. One stake treasure generates 0.2 veTREASURE every hour. The maximum veTREASURE held from a deposit is 100 times the treasure staked. In other words, it takes about 208 days to reach the veTREASURE cap. You can always stake more treasure to earn more veTREASURE. You can withdraw your stake treasure at any time. However, your accumulated veTREASURE is going to drop to 0 as soon as you unstake any amount. What does that mean? If I click this unstake, it says warning, need to fix that, but warning, you're going to drop your veTREASURE balance to 0, which means that your share of the veTREASURE pool, which is the most rewarded pool, is going to drop to 0. So just know if you unstake, you lose your veTREASURE lever rewards. Combined with treasure keys to basically veTREASURE combines with treasure keys so that you can vote on protocol issues. We'll get into that in the governance section. So you stake 100 treasure, you stake an additional 50 treasure on day 5. Wallets earn 0.2 veTREASURE per hour per 1 treasure staked. Let's look at Smarter. Smarter, at the time of this writing, was capped at 12 trillion, but we've recently burned about $1 trillion. So if we look currently, you can always go to snowtrace.io, put in the Smarter contract. The current supply of Smarter is 11 trillion 572 million 985 or no 11 trillion 572 billion 985 million 433,771. Say that 10 times fast. You can always check the supply here, and in the game you can see how much Smarter have we burned in the game. So it shows you of all the Smarter that's being burned to upgrade, how much have we burned here? That's going to translate, because it's a contract burn, this should reduce as we burn in the game. So we've already reduced by $1 trillion and will continue to reduce the supply of Smarter, which means that Smarter is really hyper deflationary. Smarter will be burned to upgrade the treasure key levels, allowing higher earnings, more voting power, and access to certain gated tools. Circulating supply of Smarter is deflationary as Smarter is burned. Treasure allocation and management. The treasury will be small, with initial funding expected to come via retail minting of treasure keys. These funds will be allocated strategically within the system based on value and need by the elected project team. So that's the tokenomics. You can always find the contracts and key wallets from the ecosystem. Right now, there's not a lot in here because we're still in beta, but when we move to mainnet, all of those token contracts will be in here, and you can always just copy one of those and pop it in here and see what is going on with that one. Okay. That is it for tokenomics. I will get into the treasure key mint next.